New developments in the investigation of a military strike that Iranian state media says killed at least 168 children at an elementary school in Iran. Video analysis suggests it was a U.S. strike. Two sources tell CNN that early findings in the probe reveal the school likely was hit because of outdated information about a nearby Iranian naval base. But as we await the Pentagon's full report, some experts are warning that not enough is being done to protect civilians. Joining us now is one of those people, retired U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant Wes J. Bryant. He was a civilian harm policy advisor and analyst at the Pentagon. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your service. When you were there in that role, what did you analyze in order to protect civilians who potentially, God forbid, could be victims of the war?
Well, we were really taking a hard look at lessons learned over the last 20, 30 years in the war on terror and prior, and trying to figure out how do we get more consistent at protecting civilians, at carrying out what we term precision warfare, true precision warfare. You know, because if you see our history in the last few decades, we have moments of incredible successes at that and moments of incredible failures. And what we're trying to stop was these moments of incredible failures like we see here with the strike on the school in Iran.
The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, has repeatedly stated, and I'm quoting him now, no other country takes as many precautions to ensure the U.S. is not targeting civilians. He also suggested that the U.S. does not get enough credit for taking these steps. How important is it for civilian harm mitigation to be a key strategic imperative when the U.S. engages in these wars?
It's incredibly vital. You know, we have strategic imperatives, you know, turning the civilian population or host nation governments against our cause, right? We have legal obligations per U.S. and international law. We have moral and ethical obligations of not wanting to kill the innocent, of protecting the innocent, which is a large premise of what was stated we were going into Iran for in the first place. So, you know, vital on many counts.
Bring us, Wes, into your former role at the Pentagon a little bit more. How many people worked with you at what was called the Civilian Protection Center of Excellence, and how many are left now? What was the explanation given to you about why your role and so many others' role was eliminated?
Well, we had about 200 personnel and growing across the whole what we called civilian harm mitigation or response enterprise across the Department of Defense and the national security apparatus. At the Center of Excellence for Civilian Protection itself at the Pentagon, we had about 30 to 35. We were actually the smallest center of excellence in the entire DoD, and still standing up, not even fully operationally capable. So, you know, the justification here was, well, I mean, you got to look at the real justification was the name. The first two words in the name was civilian protection. So it was automatically viewed as woke, of course. But then the on-paper justification was it was redundant because we already have these safeguards built into our processes. But I would argue that, you know, if we're already doing this and we're already so good to where we didn't need this new enterprise that was stood up, mind you, and initiated under the first Trump administration under Esper, and then fully stood up under Austin, under President Biden. You know, if we're really this good, why are we having incidents like this in Iran, where the Secretary of Defense himself and our own combatant commander cannot even say whether or not they dropped a bomb here?
So of the 200 people that used to work in this area to try to prevent civilian casualties during warfare, how many are there now?
There's just a handful left at the Pentagon. Really, they're relegated. They're waiting for formal congressional dissolution of this center. And then most of the personnel that were spread out across the rest of the Department of Defense implementing this civilian harm mitigation enterprise and architecture are gone. So we're down to 90% of the enterprise of the personnel have been cut at this point. The Center of Excellence itself, the few that remain there, are locked out of visibility on every one of these operations that have gone down under the Trump administration this past year. Yeah, so they have really no functional role.
It's depressing when you hear that. Retired Master Sergeant Wes J. Bryant, thanks for your service. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll
yeah.
stay in close touch.
You know, yeah, I'd like to add something else if I could.
Go ahead.
You know, I think that this problem here speaks to an overall culture. You know, when we have this culture proliferated from the top of bloodlust, of reveling in death and destruction and human suffering, of bravado for violence and power, dehumanization, disregard for international law, all these things that safeguard the innocent, enable precision warfighting, things that are supposed to make us better than our enemies. When you have that culture embodying the antithesis of everything we're supposed to stand for as American warfighters, everything else tends to slip. And that's exactly what we're seeing here.
And we anticipate fairly soon we'll get the official final report from the Pentagon on what happened at that school in Iran. Thank you very much, Retired Master Sergeant Wes J. Bryant, and we'll be right back.